Ever think about how social media is like this giant experiment? Like we're
Right.
all kind of just in it, right? I mean, it can connect us in amazing ways. And we have access to so much information. But, it also has this crazy potential to like really shake things up, especially when we're talking about democracy.
It really
So
does.
today we're going to dive into this whole idea of social media
Yeah.
as both this protector of democracy, but also like a possible threat to it.
Yeah, it's a super important conversation to have, and it's not just some theory. Like when we look back, there are some pretty wild parallels in history that can help us, really understand what's at stake here.
Okay, I'm all about those parallels. Where do we even start?
Let's rewind a bit back to like 1930s Germany.
Okay.
Imagine, a whole society where information, like who gets what, it's all tightly controlled.
Okay.
People rely on just a handful of sources, and a lot of them, yeah, they're run by the government. What happened then? Well, we saw this authoritarian regime just like take root. They totally exploited that information vacuum.
Wow. That's pretty chilling when you think about it. I can see how like if people can't get the full story, they're more likely to be manipulated.
Exactly.
But okay, how does this connect to us? Like with all our social media today?
Right. Okay, so think about it. What if those same tactics, trying to control information, what if that happened today
Right.
on social media? It would be everywhere, instantly. Like millions of people would see it.
Yeah.
It'd be like having this like global network of watchdogs,
Yeah.
ready to bark the second someone tries to mess with information or take away freedoms.
That's true. Like just by trying to censor something online,
Yeah,
you might actually make people more aware of it.
you do. You absolutely do.
And they might push back even harder.
Exactly. And that's powerful, right? That collective awareness. Social media can like kickstart that. And we've seen it happen just recently. Online activism,
Yeah.
it's successfully challenged like censorship in all these different places. It's like this real-time feedback loop. You try to restrict information,
Yeah.
boom, immediate pushback.
So social media can basically give citizens more power to hold like leaders accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. It creates this level of transparency that, I mean, you couldn't even imagine it a few decades ago. But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Social media's potential, right? As this defender of democracy, it's huge, but it's not like a sure thing.
Okay, I'm all ears. What makes the difference? Like what determines if social media actually makes democracy stronger or ends up weakening it?
Yeah, that's the question. And a big part of it is what I call democratic readiness. Like different countries, they're just at different levels. It's based on their history, their culture, how much their citizens get involved in, civic stuff.
Democratic readiness.
Yeah.
I like that. Can you give me an example of what you mean? Like what does that look like in a specific country?
Sure, let's look at France.
Okay.
They have this long history of, civic activism.
Yeah.
And they're deeply aware of the things that could threaten democracy. French citizens, they're not afraid to hit the streets, stand up for their rights.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly vigilant, like on guard against anything that looks like it could erode those democratic norms.
So it's almost like they have this muscle memory.
Yeah.
When it comes to defending democracy, it's ingrained in their culture.
Yeah, you could say that. It's like their history, the times they've had democracy, the times they haven't. It's given them this deep understanding, like they really get how fragile democratic institutions are.
Right.
And how important it is to protect them.
So France's history has like prepared them to use social media in this really effective way.
Yeah, in a way you could say that.
Yeah.
Now, okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's look at the United States.
Okay.
Now, the U.S., obviously, it has this incredibly strong foundation of democracy, but there are a couple things that might make it, well, a bit more vulnerable to certain threats.
Okay, now this is getting interesting. Tell me more.
One thing is, well, the U.S. hasn't really experienced authoritarian rule, on its own soil, not in recent history anyway.
Right.
And that can lead to a sense of, I don't know, complacency.
Yeah.
Like this belief that, oh, it can't happen here.
Right. Like we take it for granted because we haven't had to fight for it in the same way that some other countries have.
Exactly. And then there's also this strong sense of American exceptionalism, right?
Yeah.
This idea that like the U.S. is somehow different, that the problems other countries face, well, they just won't happen here.
Right.
But that can create like blind spots. It makes it harder to see the ways democracy can be chipped away little by little.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the potential dangers here, but how does all this like actually connect to this slow erosion of democracy that you were talking
Well,
about?
that's a good question. See, we often think of threats to democracy as these big dramatic things, right? Like coups or revolutions.
Yeah.
But the truth is, the biggest threats today, they're usually way more subtle, more sneaky.
So you're talking about like manipulating elections, undermining independent media,
Yeah.
or maybe like, expanding the power of the executive branch in a way that messes with the checks and balances.
Yeah, exactly. These tactics, they're gradual, they're disguised, they don't look like this big power grab, so they kind of fly under the radar. It's like death by a thousand cuts.
Yeah, okay.
Instead of one fatal blow, it's just these little things that build up over time,
Right.
and that's where social media comes back in, right?
Exactly. Remember that double-edged sword idea?
Yeah.
It can expose these sneaky attempts to like chip away at democracy, but it can also be used to like speed them up.
Oh, wow. So how do we navigate all of this? How do we make sure that social media is a force for good when it comes to democracy?
That's the big question, and it's one that we're gonna dig into even deeper in the next part of our deep dive.
You were saying that social media, it's kind of like this double-edged sword when it comes to democracy. So how do we make sure it's used for good, to protect democracy instead of hurting it?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It really boils down to how we use it, the choices we make as individuals, and then also like the actions we take as a society
Yeah.
together.
Okay, so where do we even start with something like that? Well, I think one of the most important things is really building up this culture of critical thinking and media literacy.
Right.
Like, we need to be able to actually analyze information, to evaluate the sources, figure out, what's fact and what's fiction. And this is especially true online, right? Where misinformation can spread so quickly.
Yeah, and the disinformation campaigns these days, they're getting really sophisticated.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk in deep fakes, bots, algorithms that are like designed to push divisive content. It's kind of scary,
It
honestly.
is. It's a real minefield out there.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to be so careful about what we consume and what we share. And I think a good first step is, be skeptical of anything that just seems to confirm your biases or anything that makes you have this really strong emotional reaction. Yeah.
So being aware of our own like confirmation bias, how that can make us, vulnerable to being manipulated.
Exactly. I mean, it's natural to want to read things that fit with our worldview,
Hmm.
but we have to challenge those assumptions, and really try to look for different perspectives, even if they make us uncomfortable. We should be asking ourselves, who's pushing this information? What are their motives? Are they trying to inform me, or are they trying to rile me up?
So it's almost like we need to be like investigative journalists or something.
Yeah.
Really digging deep and questioning everything we see online.
Yeah, in a way, yes. We need to be a lot more discerning about the information we consume, like actually checking sources, cross-referencing things, looking for evidence, real reporting, not just taking things at face value.
So it's not just about having access to information, right?
Yeah.
It's about having the tools and the mindset to really analyze it critically.
Exactly. It's about developing that healthy skepticism, questioning assumptions and really committing to seeking out the truth, even when it's hard, even when it challenges what we think we know.
Okay, but how do we actually do that? Like, are there specific strategies or techniques we can use to get better at media literacy?
Yeah, there are definitely some key things you can do. First, be really mindful of the sources you're getting your information from. Look for reputable news outlets, organizations, individuals, people who have a track record of accuracy and impartiality. Pay attention to things like the website's domain name. Check the About Us section. See if there are any potential conflicts of interest.
So basically doing your research, just like you would with anything else. Like if you were going to buy a product, you'd read reviews, you'd compare prices.
Exactly. And another helpful tip is to look for corroboration. If you see the same information being reported by multiple reputable sources, well, it's more likely to be accurate.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like that triangulation thing they talk about with navigation. Like you get a much more accurate location fix if you have multiple points of reference.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And if you do come across something that makes you feel a really strong emotion, like anger or outrage, just pause before you share it. To take a moment to really think about it objectively. Like ask yourself, is this meant to provoke a reaction or is it meant to actually inform?
So resist that knee-jerk reaction
Hmm.
and try to like approach information more thoughtfully, more carefully.
Exactly. And finally remember that you're not alone in this whole fight for truth and accuracy. Connect with other people who care about media literacy, who care about critical thinking. Have those conversations even with people who might disagree with you.
Yeah, that's so important. It's so easy to get stuck in those echo chambers
Yeah.
online where you only see things that confirm your existing
Uh-huh.
beliefs.
Yeah.
But if we really want to be informed, to be good citizens, we have to get out of those comfort zones.
Absolutely. The more we have these conversations, with people from different backgrounds, different viewpoints, the better we get at spotting biases, at recognizing those manipulation tactics, and it helps us get a more nuanced understanding of these complex issues.
So it's about building bridges, right? Fostering that dialogue
Mhm.
and recognizing that we all have a role to play in making the online world a more informed, a more discerning place.
Exactly. It's a collective effort. And the more we work together, the more effective we'll be at using social media to really benefit democracy.
It sounds like we can't just be, defensive when it comes to social media and
Mm-mm.
democracy. It's not enough to just like protect ourselves from the bad stuff. We actually have to use it to make democracy stronger.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We need to shift from just playing defense to being more proactive. Like, how can we use social media to get people more involved, to increase transparency, to hold those in power, accountable?
So what can we actually do? What are some specific steps?
One of the most powerful things, I think it's giving a platform to the people who are already out there, promoting those democratic values, fighting against injustice. Social media can be amazing for like connecting with activists, with organizations, with individuals who are on the front lines.
So sharing their stories, raising awareness about what they're up against,
Yeah.
helping them build support for their causes.
Exactly. It's about building this global network of solidarity, right? Using social media to boost these democratic movements all over the world.
That's a really powerful idea. It's like
Yeah.
even small actions can make a difference when we're all connected like this.
Yeah. And it's not just about, amplifying other people's voices. We can use our own platforms too, right? To engage in good conversations, to share information that's actually backed up by evidence, to call out misinformation when we see it.
So being active,
Yeah.
not just passively scrolling and consuming.
Mhm.
Exactly. And being thoughtful about what we share, what we put out there. We have to be critical thinkers, responsible citizens. We have to actively shape like the digital world around us.
This whole deep dive has been so insightful. It's clear that social media, it can be this amazing tool for democracy, but it can also be, a real danger to it. And the outcome, it really comes down to us, the people using it, the choices we make.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The future of democracy in this digital age, it depends on us being aware, on our critical thinking skills, on our willingness to have those tough conversations, in a constructive way.
So as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with this.
Yeah.
We have this incredible chance to shape how democracy works in the digital world. So let's use these tools the right way. Let's talk to each other respectfully, and let's work together to build a world that's more informed, more just, and more democratic.
Yeah, well said. And remember, this fight for democracy, it never really ends. We have to stay vigilant, we have to stay involved, and we have to keep fighting for those values, the values that make a society free and open.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.